May 23rd, and welcome school committee and our student rep to the meeting.
Annabelle.
Oh, you want me to just jump right in?
You can jump right in
Oh,
if you want,
wonderful.
because we have to reorganize. That means there's right now complete chaos. No chair, nothing. The only chair,
geez.
the only chair in the room is just the ones that you see. Exactly.
Okay. So Arts Night was May 10th. There was a lot of really great artwork on display, both on display and for sale. We have like a lot of talented artists in our school, so it was really great to see everything. Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot. Yeah. Also great refreshments, wonderful. And there was some really great live music and singing. I heard you. I missed it, but I heard you sang, so I'm sure it was wonderful.
Thank you.
So the spring band concert was May 15th. Some songs were played with combined bands, so it was the junior high and the senior high. Some songs were just junior high, some songs were just senior high. It sounded amazing. And there was also the senior recognition for members of the drama club and band. Also for seniors, the last day was May 21st. So finals is this week. So exciting.
So you're almost out.
Yeah, exactly. Tonight in the cafeteria is Mr. Granby. For those of you who don't know, it's junior and senior guys. It's like a Miss United States, whatever, but like with guys from like the school competing like in all these different. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Really excited for that.
Here comes Mr. Granby.
No, they do get. Last time I was at, I do think that they got introduced. Like they walked out with like a song,
Okay.
so and everybody got to like choose their songs. Like,
Is this a fundraiser? It is, right?
is it?
For Shriners Hospital.
Oh, okay.
Does the winner ride the float in the parade? For the
Oh,
150th?
gee.
I think we should put that.
That should be a thing. I love that. Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll get on that.
Okay.
It'll make it happen. I don't think it is right now, but like it should be. Like that's great. So RSAC, the Regional Student Advisory Council, orientation was for next year's, so the 2018-2019 delegates. That meeting was May 4th, and the new SSAC, the State Student Advisory Council delegates, and the RSAC leadership were elected at that meeting. You want me to? I'll explain for you because you're.
I'm looking at you with your.
So, the Regional Student Advisory Council is this group of kids across the state. There's 5 regions, so each region has their own meeting. Ours is Wimersack, Western Mass, and we talk about issues that involving the schools and school districts in the region, and talk about like how we can like the most pressing issues and like important things to the student body at that time, and how we can fix them and like what we can do to like resolve them, programs and things we can implement into the schools to better students the school environment and like students' life as in general, their well-being in the schools. We put together a final report at the end of the year, and we send it to our advisors who make edits. They help us revise it, and then we send it out to the schools, and they can take it how they want, but is our suggestions on what to implement so we can like help from students to students, so we can help their quality of life at the schools. And then the state advisory council is students from all 5 regions. So at the regional meetings, at the orientation that just happened May 4th, delegates to go to the state level were elected. There's 2 different councils. I don't know how other regions work, but for our region, there's 2 different councils, A and B, and 4 delegates are elected from each council, as well as 2 alternates, I believe, and then one chair from each council who co-chair the entire region, and then one communications coordinator. So those are our leadership positions. They kind of run the meetings and help push things along. It's basically like a student-run sort of thing, with help and supervision from our advisors. All our advisors are people who work at the Department of Education. So all of the leadership go to the state meeting, where the orientation is happening. There's one meeting this month. There's one meeting next month. And the orientation is so all the students learn like what kind of goes on and like how to like topics and stuff, like basically how the whole thing runs. And then they also elect the leadership there, which is the chair, vice chair, and the communications coordinator. The chair actually is a voting member on the Board of Education, like the student member. They've broken ties on votes and stuff before, so it's like a really like important thing. And then the vice chair runs all the meetings for the state level, and then the communications coordinator, communicates, to, sum it up. And then there's a 3-day leadership conference in August. It's about mid-August this year. And issues and topics that the department is working on currently, things that we can help with. They present these topics to us, and then all the delegates, and then the delegates get to decide what they think are the most important issues, things that they're most passionate about, and they split into work groups, and they talk about those issues and like come up with plans and programs and systems that they can write up in their final reports and like send to the schools, and so that they can implement that to help students across the entire state. Okay. I'm trying to like make sure I'm getting everything. So the information and the topics from the state level get passed down through those delegates and the leadership team to the regional councils, and they get to choose from those topics like what work groups they want to have for the year. They can continue work from the previous year, or they also don't have to do the same thing that the state level is working on, so they can be entirely different. This year they were the same. The work groups were mental health and civics, so it was nice to kind of bounce ideas off of both and like really kind of work together. I think that's it. Yeah. So the final SSAC meeting for this year was May 17th. All the final reports were finished, and we had a really special guest. I really enjoyed her presentation. It was the 2017 National Teacher of the Year, Sydney Chafee. She came and talked to us about the principles that, kind of things that she really believes in, but also things that she is trying to implement in schools across the entire country. She went on kind of like a tour around the whole country and talked about all these things. I don't have the list of principles on me right now, but I can like email that to you guys if you'd like that. So she talked about those things, and then she also talked to us about a program. It's a small program right now, so what she asked was for suggestions on from students, like how can we advertise it better and like promote it. So the program is students nominate a teacher. The only requirement to nominate a teacher is that they have to have made an impact in your life in some way, and so you write up a statement and you send it in to the program, and then they choose one teacher per month, and they give them like a few $1,000s, and they like buy supplies for their classrooms and stuff, and it's a really great like program. So she was asking how to, I can send that more information about that too. She was asking how to promote that better so that word gets out, so we can like recognize our teachers and the great job that they're doing, because it's such an important part of like everything. Education is plays such an important role. So She's talking about that. Oh yeah, I summed everything else up in the description. Okay. So I also am still finishing the Blizzard Bag report and the list of all the sticky note ideas, so I can email that, like a joint email thing with all of that. I can email that tonight. This is the most emotional part of this. Okay. I just wanted to thank everybody for this opportunity to sit with you guys as a student representative. For the past 4 years, it's been a long time. But not, it's been a long time. Like, it kind of flew by, but like, it also didn't, so.
She's the second most senior on this
Yes, she
committee.
is,
Wow.
yeah.
I didn't realize that.
What do you mean second what?
You have more years than everybody else except for me.
Stick around.
Yes.
Oh yeah. You know, if I fail my finals, it's the 5-year plan for me, so I'll be back. Don't worry. Sorry, Jasmine. Not all high schools have this opportunity, so you know, for student voice and their input in everything. So it was extremely impactful and important to me to be here, and also to the student body and just overall the school district. It's been a great experience. I learned a lot. I learned a lot from, you know, the whole speaking part and everything, and, you know, having this opportunity, but also from things that you guys have talked about and important conversations that you guys have had as a committee while I've been here. So, thanks. I don't know, I just... So
Actually,
tonight...
until you read that, I did not realize that you were here for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's a year of like a lot of last things. My last, you know, meeting as far as I guess that I've been on for like 2 years. Like all these things that I've been on for a few years. It's just a lot of like.
Yeah. I was trying to think, you know, how a 9th grader feels as she sits down with all these guys talking about weird stuff. But
I was terrified.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie. I was really scared. I was like, ooh, like you had to move the microphone much closer than it is right now. I was very scared. Yeah. So tonight I'm gonna pass this whole thing off to Jasmine Jones. Where'd you go? Hello. Come in.
Come and join us.
Come in the frame. She's been elected by our student council as the 2018-2019 student representative to the school committee. So.
Well, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
We're excited. Are you?
Sure.
Of course you are. Are you a junior?
I will be a senior
You'll be a senior.
Yeah.
Okay.
at the end of this year.
So that's cool.
Yeah.
Annabelle, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll miss you anyway, but we'll miss you. I wish you the best with everything that you do. Hopefully, as you said, this was helpful for whatever you're gonna do later on as well. But thanks. You know, I really was kind of dumbfounded with the 4-year thing. I didn't. I was just like, what? So well done. Thank you. Here's a question for both of you. Are you also a rep for the state advisory? No?
No. Our delegates this year. Am I allowed to say names? Is that a thing I
If
can
they're
do?
elected, yeah.
Okay. I don't know. We don't talk about names. Oh, okay. Our delegates are Jordan Healy and Dylan Gordon, and our alternates are I don't know how to say her last name.
Ariana Klikatka.
Thank you. And Bob Sharma. So. And Jordan is a state delegate. I can talk to her and have her come and
So
speak
once in a
if
while,
you'd like.
they can come over and continue to share the same thing. It was really helpful for us to understand. I did not realize that the regional and state level work never reached our schools. In fact, I can say that until last year I saw anything. So it's good to know, but it's also allowing us to understand what the students find to be important for them. And, you know, stuff that you picked up were really pretty deep stuff, right? mental health and civics, and you had something else last year that you guys, or the year before, that you guys were working on. So it was nice. Hopefully we can continue that. Things that happen in the school, we don't always hear about those, at least not the way you guys hear about them. So it's always important, even though at times it sounds as if we're repeating what already happened or what people we assume will know will happen, but we don't. And it doesn't really give us an opportunity to acknowledge, celebrate, ask questions about all the great stuff that you guys do. So we'll look forward to it.
And Annabelle, on behalf of the school department, I want to thank you for all of your time and effort. You are truly a role model to our community as a whole, to your student body. You participated in the strategic plan committee with all of your effort and your insight into the student life, and it really, I think, brought the strategic plan to another whole level. In addition, you were my intern, which was fabulous. And I really appreciate all the work on the policy that I promise we will get finished. And then finally, your work with GCAM, really starting that work study program. You have started, implemented, and actually brought through to fruition several projects that really have your name stamp on them, in addition to just being a wonderful student and part of the student body. So congratulations on your next steps, and I can't wait to have you come back and tell us what you're doing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We will miss you.
Thanks, Annabelle. So I'll just break protocol.
No.
Thank you.
Aw.
I'll see ya. If you guys have to, well, we actually will keep you for a few more minutes. I'm speaking as if I am still a chair, but you guys can leave after that if you need to go to Mr. Brandon.
Yeah, important things here.
So we need to pull a chair for. You can grab anyone that you want. You can even get the high chair. If you
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you wanna be all fancy above all of us? Would you like my seat?
So should we learn about Jasmine a little bit? What she
We can
does?
learn about Jasmine a little bit, Jasmine.
What do you want to know?
Who you are, what do you like? What do you do? Sports, arts, music?
I am a senior, hopefully, if I pass this year, which I should. I do play soccer and lacrosse. Definitely a student before an athlete, but I do like sports. I'm not really into art and music as much as other kids are. I'm not really artistically talented or musically talented, so I kind of stick to sports, what I'm good at.
That's good.
I don't know.
And what, were you, did you volunteer for this position, or were you told that, somebody has to do it and pushed into it?
I was nominated and I did accept it,
Cool.
so.
Quite happy to hear that.
So what are you hoping to get out of the experience of being the student rep?
I think I'm just kind of hoping to truly represent our student body. I feel like sometimes students don't always have a say and stuff, so I'm hoping that we get more of a say.
Cool. Look forward to that. I guess, is it fair to say that there is really, we don't have specific topics that we're looking for, so anything that you think is good to share, and it could include things that are observations, things that you and the student body believes are things that we don't pay attention to, we don't hear about. Feel free. Don't be nervous. Don't think that this is really a high-level formal conversation. We're trying to keep it as approachable as possible so that everybody can come. And I don't know if you ever were here before or you watched it on TV. We have sometimes family members coming in, teachers coming in. Robin's always here, keeping us in check, and right? Yes. So don't hesitate to share what you think is important for us to hear, and that's what we're here for. So we consider you a member of our committee. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Yes. Looking forward to hearing your voice and representing the students. Welcome.
Should we let them go?
Yes. Mr. Granby's waiting.
Yeah. What time is it?
Starts at 7. So
All
I
right, so
guess-
it's 7:01.
Oh.
You guys are making cool. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Annabelle.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jasmine. Before they leave, should we continue the same tradition of having the student rep every other meeting instead
I
of?
think so,
yeah.
given the workload as a junior,
Yeah.
as a senior.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think so. Unless there's something, that you feel strongly about. That you want to come, just let us know.
Yeah.
But
You
usually
can come
it's,
any meeting,
Yep.
right?
It's usually the first.
Yeah. So let us know if you can't make it, and if you want to just push it to the next meeting. We typically meet twice a month, so.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Alrighty,
Thank
we'll
you.
see you, soon. Bye, enjoy Mr. Granby.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so following the town election, the committee will need to reorganize, which requires me to open the meeting, which I have done. And we've welcomed our student rep. So I would run the meeting for the election of the chair, and once the chair is selected, that person will take over the meeting. So do I have any willing participants for chair of the committee?
Do we just nominate someone at
You
this
may
point?
nominate.
I'd like to nominate Emery Everett as chair. Continue his post.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Go ahead.
Good.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Now I get to turn it right back over.
Alright, great. So, thank you, I appreciate it. Let me, before we get to the next one,
It went really quick.
Sorry, so it was a nomination by Jen and a second by Mike. Actually, Gen C. How are we gonna do that? Gen C?
Gen C, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Gen
we
C?
got this.
Okay, alright.
School, Jennifer was the most popular name.
There were like 4 in
Oh
your
my
class?
god, no, there was like 8 of us.
Yeah.
We had, try and split that name up. 8 Jens, and we were all Jennifer Lynn's, and like 2 Jennifer Ann's.
I'm a Jennifer,
and 4
but I was
Gen
not in her
Cs.
class.
Yeah.
wow,
It was crazy.
And lots of J names, because my cousin Jay was in your class.
Yeah,
All the Jens.
all the Jens.
All the Jens.
We had all the Jens.
Yeah.
you guys had a hard life, it's
Yeah.
like-
Well, out of a class of like 43, it was pretty predominant.
Yeah.
wow. So thank you. Before we move on, I would like to repeat something that I said earlier. Hopefully, in the next couple of years, we, hand the baton to others to take these roles, because I, as much as I enjoy this, I really think that these roles are meant to rotate. And given that we don't stay on these committees forever, it's good to really create that foundation for someone, whoever is interested, to become more comfortable. And those of us who've been here for a little longer, to just give those individuals a hand to get used to it. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm looking forward to this next year, but next year I'm hoping that I will be a member of the committee, not necessarily the chair. I'm giving you 1 year heads up to prepare for it. So the second position that we have is what we call secretary. However, we had a desire to change the name of the position to vice chair, and if our policy doesn't say so, we will adjust it that way as well, because we don't really, our secretary is not really a recording secretary necessarily.
Right.
So it doesn't always resonate, and it may cause some folks not to really raise their hands for it. So with that, is there anyone who's interested in the position of vice chair, or would anybody like to nominate themselves or somebody else for it?
I think Gen C just raised her hand.
Volunteer for it.
All right.
I'll second that.
You have a good seconder.
All right. Is there any discussion why? No. Okay.
Because she said so.
Why she shouldn't?
Yeah.
All right. So all in favor to approve Jennifer Curran as our vice chair for next year, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Jen. Good luck. We don't have any other positions. I'm wondering if any other school committees our size really have other positions, but we can look at it and for future purposes we can.
We have subcommittees. So you would have
Yeah.
like a budget and
Yeah,
a,
Yep.
policy, but,
so we can do that.
we're teeny tiny.
Cool.
Teeny tiny school.
So I guess here it says that I would call to order, but you already called to order our meeting, so I will do that in a ceremonial way, and I will call the meeting for May 23rd to order. We have a hi Mark. We have a consent agenda that I'll start with, if you don't mind, which includes our minutes from April 30th, our regular meeting. Also, we had a budget hearing on April 30th. Then we have our minutes from May 7th, our regular meeting. And we have donation of computers that we need to approve. They're all part of our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve our consent agenda as presented?
I'll make the motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any changes, edits to what is included in the consent agenda?
No, the only thing I saw was tonight's minutes are in the consent agenda folder, but I don't think, since it's not listed here, that's.
Yeah, the date is.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah. So it seems as if the tonight's date is on one of the minutes. So if we can just correct that, it's not a huge deal, but for the record, it should. You're talking about the agenda, right?
Yeah, I think it's just a.
Yeah.
So-
Today's agenda was in the consent agenda folder,
Yeah.
so I think it was just moved there. We can take it out. It's not supposed to be. Yep. All right. So all in favor to approve, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. We don't have any visitors tonight. So now I will switch to the committee liaisons. The first one is our representative to the Collaborative for Educational Services. Jen, for your information, this one role is there's a collaborative for educational services, and that's their name, that's been around for a while, that was created in collaboration of almost all of the school districts in Hampshire County and Franklin County. And these folks meet every other month, right?
Yeah, it's like once a month, but not quite every month is kind of what
Okay.
they do.
So they meet with certain frequency, and they talk about issues that are related to education from a broader perspective, and they really have the power of having so many representatives from all those school committees, and lately being the last 4 or 5 years maybe, they really started getting into issues that almost every single school committee would consider crucial. Anything from school choice to budget to enrollment, they started talking about those, so it's an exciting position. And Mike was our representative at the collaborative last year, and we only need one representative. So having done this in the past, and having really enjoyed it, if you don't mind, I will first ask you whether you would like to continue being our representative
If-
for the collaborative.
If nobody else is willing to do
Oh,
it.
okay, so that's good.
I will continue to do it. I don't mind it. It was.
Okay, So if you're not, saying, hey, you know what, this is something I started and there are things that I need to follow up on, then it's
Could you tell me what the other ones are too, so that I?
the other ones. The second one actually is almost done.
Mhm.
It's related to our school building
Next door.
and this started close to 2 years ago now. And we're almost at the end. When the school opens in September, we're going to have probably a few more meetings because we have to wrap up the budget, make sure that everything is in order, and then we dissolve it. I don't know how many meetings it's going to take, but that's almost done. So, but we have to continue representing the school committee. When we say two, it's really Cheryl is a representative there, and I've been the representative there as well. And our principal from our elementary school, Bill Latoy, is there as well.
Okay.
So that leaves the policy subcommittee.
Mhm.
Of the three things that the school committee is truly responsible of or has purview on, one being the budget, the second one being the hiring of certain members of the school administration, primarily the superintendent. The third one is related to the school policies, and that includes everything that is really happening in the schools, anything that needs to be tied to a policy or regulation. The school committee has the purview to make sure that they're updated, they're in sync with what the laws and regulations are, and also update them to make sure that they are representative of what we're expecting in our school district. Jen and I started working on that last year. We need 2 members on that one, and we went through several sections and we approved 2 or 3 of those sections already. But we need to continue and we need to finalize that work. It's really going through all the remaining policies of the school district and then bringing them back to the school committee for approval. The Collaborative for Educational Services, they are in Northampton.
They actually, yeah, so they meet either Northampton or Greenfield,
Okay.
depending on the month. This year it seems like they were mostly up in Greenfield. I seem to drive to Greenfield an awful lot as compared to Northampton, and it's usually pretty easy to get to. It's like right off of Route 5 where the transportation building is, or at GCC was the other place they met once. So it was pretty easy.
Yeah, I think they start around what, 6:30? They have
Yeah,
food
so-
at 6,
Yeah,
right?
there's usually a little dinner at 6. They'll put out sandwiches or a little buffet of some sort, and then the meeting starts at 6:30. And that can go anywhere till 8 to mostly right around 9 is when we were wrapping things up.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, great topics discussed, one, but I got to meet, and I'm sure it was the same thing for you, many people from different school committees, and I got to hear their perspective on a variety of issues that we're experiencing in our own school district. So
It did help me out a lot trying to make sense of what was going on here. Sometimes hearing similar things just being explained or talked about a little bit differently.
yeah. And the representative actually, even though we call it representative, becomes a board member. So gets to vote on the budget of the collaborative, and then gets to vote on the executive director's evaluation. And if there is any hiring going on that requires board approval, gets involved in the hiring and evaluation of those individuals as well. So with that long intro to that one, is there anyone who would like to be our representative at the collaborative?
So I just want to say, I would, as I'm looking at this, I would prefer to be on something else.
Okay. All right.
But if nobody else wants to do this, and I'll just continue along with this.
Okay. So phew, we have an out.
I'm just a little nervous about being able to get there on time,
Okay.
honestly, because I know I work in Northampton, but I still have to take care of my kids first
Yeah.
before I can
No,
get
that's
there.
understandable.
Get there.
pesky little
The pesky kids, right? So, that's honestly my concern, because
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I can do the return trip soon enough.
Yeah. You know, we hope that you have many long years ahead of you on this committee, so you can choose to do any one of these things in the future. So don't worry about it. Yeah. And Jen, you can actually, if you want to, you can, Jen
Yeah.
C, you can do it too if you.
Yeah,
you're
it
interested.
doesn't matter. Whatever we need filling in on, I'm game for.
So I'll stick with this,
All right.
All right,
all right? If everybody agrees.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Is there all in favor to approve Mike as our representative to the collaborative? Please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. West Street Building Committee reps. We say two, but who else is? I mean, we don't really vote for you. You were there naturally. And I think this is going without, because even the town, I don't think at this point appoints us anymore. I did not receive it. Well, actually, it's not the end of the fiscal year yet. That's why.
Right.
Yeah. So.
And
Okay.
I think maybe it was too, because wasn't it Jim? Before Jim.
Jim was
and
actually,
then it
yes,
was
that's
you
true.
and Jim,
Yeah.
And then we just said, you know what, it's
Yeah.
so much is wrapping up at this point that
Yes.
we just
And in fact, last year we said two, and Marie wanted to be, but it was already done.
Right.
So we continued with the same folks that we have. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess from our committee, I will continue to represent. So if there is a motion for that, just so that we do our due
So moved.
diligence. Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor to approve, please say aye. Aye. Policy Subcommittee.
I'd like to stay on.
You would like to?
Yeah.
Would
I
you
can-
like to
I'll do that.
do that? Great. Like that. So,
Jen squared.
Yeah.
yeah. So
Wonder twins.
if
Sorry.
if you guys
Karma.
if you guys that's good.
Sorry.
If you don't mind, we can do both of them at the same time. So, is there a motion to nominate Jen Curran and Jen Bartos? Is that how you
That's how I
say
said,
your
yeah.
Okay, Bartos to Policy Subcommittee.
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you both very much. We may have some other subcommittees in the future, but you know we'll take care of those as we discuss and we agree whether or not to have them. All right. So with that, we are reorganized. We're gonna go into old business. Start with FY18 budget, where Mark is gonna give us a lot of good news.
Well, at this point, you have the budget in your folder. We've expended all but 1.66 million of the $8.55 million budget, which is about 19.4% of the budget remaining to be expended. And I always say the thing to keep in mind is that we do have salaries that run over the summer, so that everybody's salary does not necessarily track with the 12 months that you see on the calendar. I'm actually at the point of working on a calculation to see how close we are to a break even with the budget. I got some data. Actually, just had a conversation with Mary today, and I was working on it now to see where we stand. But what is optimistic is, at least with the passing of the two additional warrants at special town meeting, the both of those being the teacher and the tuition for Smith, that will take some pressure off of our budget, because the teacher is currently in our budget, and we have paid two of the bills out of the school budget because there was no warrant article to pay Smith prior to the approval of the warrant. So that's money that will become offloaded out of the budget, and I will complete the calculation, and I can place it in the drive tomorrow for you all to take a look at after I meet with Cheryl on it.
That Smith vocational situation really seems to have caught all of us off guard, because we still don't know, we the collective we, We still don't seem to know what is the right way to proceed with that. Our approach was and still is that we don't really provide vocational education. Vocational education is outside our purview. And even though the only thing related to our school district is the superintendent's conversation with the student that expresses an interest in going to a vocational school, and based on the law, if it is a legitimate request, say okay to release the student from our district, we don't really have much to do, but it is still worth our effort to dig a little deeper to understand or to find the answer to some of the questions that were raised, and I think those were good questions with respect to Chapter 70 and everything else, and we can talk about those. And what you were referring to, Mark, is that because the warrant was voted down at the special town meeting, really it wasn't clear who was going to pay for it. So instead of just almost becoming delinquent on that payment, the school department paid the first 2 installments on that one.
So what piece of that is in question? It's not the fact that they have the right to go to the school, it's who pays for it?
That is
Whether
how we
whether it's a school budget or whether it's a town budget, is that the piece that we're still trying to figure out?
Which at the end of the day, I mean, folks who say that, you know, what's the difference? It's coming from our town anyway. But I think it, in terms of what, even where the payment should come from, is not clear. And I'm not saying this in a complaining or derogatory way. Is just that it's not clear to any one of us. We were just told that by Chapter 74, it's a requirement. We understand that. We have a legal opinion that says the town does it, but really the mechanism by which the town is supposed to be doing it is not clear to the town or to us, and that is a problem. I mean, it's interesting. Now we have a little more breathing room for us to do our homework, but it's still something that we should.
I think in the beginning there was some question about whether or not the student had the right to attend, and so there was some education at the town level and the community that yes, under Chapter 74, you know, the understanding is that yes, we have a partner regional vocational technical school that we're a part of, but if the program's not provided, then we, by law, have to send the student where the program is. And I think that required some education, and I think once people understood that, then the discussion became, well, now how do you fund that? That's different than what we've been doing in the past. And so now I think there's some collective understanding of that, and so hopeful moving forward that, students will receive the support they need and be able to, go. And, the good news is that there's been discussion with Pathfinder about growing their programming to reach the needs, as we're hearing all over the news, the lack of technical skilled workforce, and Pathfinder's well aligned to develop some programs to meet the needs of students. So we're excited about that. Opportunity for them.
That's our regional school district for vocational purposes, and the more they have, the better it is for us. So we know who they are. We've been sending our students there, and I think it's fair to say that if everything goes well, we may be able to send one of our students, one of the two that is currently on track to go to Smith. One of them may actually end up going to Pathfinder if they can quickly wrap up what they're working on.
Is there a difference in price between sending a student to Pathfinder as opposed to sending it to Smith?
The tuition is generally about the same, but the cost really comes in the transportation because the regional transportation, they send a bus here for Pathfinder students, where we're covering the transportation cost for Smith. So there is that difference.
Yeah.
And how much more is it for what we send out for students that stay in Granby? Like, I think the tuition in the warrant article for the second student was like $16,474 or something.
Right.
What is it that we pay or is factored in for each individual student here to stay in town?
So what's our per pupil expenditure? It's about
like 10,000 and change.
10,007. Yeah.
Yeah, the finance committee worked it out to, with one of the, if you added something else on, it was closer to 15,000, I think, but.
right?
No,
It
what they were
depends
saying,
on
yeah.
if you add what was voted on town meeting floor,
Yeah.
if you add retiree health care.
I think that was a piece of
You
it
know, so
already.
there, if you add some things, then you get a larger per pupil expense.
But that's
But
not
that-
being factored into the tuition that we're paying, the 16,000, like that's just the tuition for sending a student to Smith. And what is it for Pathfinder?
I don't have the exact numbers,
For-
it's
Per
about,
pupil?
Yeah.
one is
The
17.
charge, I think they're both working on the same schedule.
Yeah, they're
At least
within, like,
whatever I was able
$200.
to download from Desi
Mm-hmm.
is showing the same number for almost the same number. I don't want to say exact, but it's maybe a few dollars off for both of them. The differentiator was transportation.
And the difference really, and it gets a little complicated, and I'm not sure I'm gonna explain it well, but Smith Vocation is a true tuition. We pay that tuition. What we're charged for Pathfinder is we are part of that region, and so we get charged basically a net school spending, a lot like Chapter 70. So basically the foundation formula, we get charged on what Granby can quote unquote afford. And so that's different depending on the town that the student is residing in. But our charge, so to speak, from Pathfinder is about 16,000. It's a little over 16,000.
I'm sorry, I have a lot of questions on
Yeah,
this.
no, that's
I was
okay.
one of the
It's
ones
good.
that
And some
fired
I'm gonna
up
have to
a
come
little
back
bit.
to you
And,
with, but
And
yeah.
it was one of the ones that sort of got me going at town meeting and things. So what I'm worried about as a parent in town, and now sitting here on the school committee, which is different for me, is that more and more kids are going to be like, I want to go to Smith because they have different programs, and we're going to be spending more and more money to be funding that. Is there a way that we can approach Smith to partner or regionalize with them in a different way so that we're now going to be in that kind of a funding situation? So transportation is then factored in differently, and because what scares me is that we're going to be losing more and more students to opportunities that aren't being offered at Pathfinder and taking more and more students away. Like the class sizes are not particularly big, and more kids are talking about moving out. So I just want to see, you know, in my very newness in my very first meeting, like what is it that we can do? I mean, you guys have probably all talked this to death, and I feel I'm probably beating a dead horse in your eyes, and I apologize for that. But
No, not at all.
I
No,
I
they're
don't
good
know.
questions.
I don't know. I mean, what is it that we can do?
So some of the things that we've been doing, we reached out, actually CTEC reached out to us, which is a different program. It's a different vocational program. So we've had some beginning conversation with CTEC. It's a half-day program, Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative.
My
but it's
friend's son
still,
goes there,
you know, and so we are reaching out to find out what vocational programs students are looking for and why they're choosing the ones they're choosing. The first Smith vocational, the student was already there and just moved into town, and it was criminal justice. So I think talking amongst ourselves also about programming that we can provide and create that maybe could keep students with us. So those are all ideas and discussions that we've been having ongoing. We share your concern about enrollment.
Yeah. And so if we ended up getting into a partnership like that with, I want to say CPAC, and that's not it, CTEC.
Yeah.
Would it then, if this, like the second student that's going to Pathfinder, not going to Pathfinder, going to Smith, that we, you know, would that then eliminate that option for them because it would be with this new partnership school? Or are they going to say, well, I'm already enrolled in this
Right,
program, you're going to pay for me for the 4 years? Like, what are the boundaries that we
Right.
have?
Yeah, those are good questions, and because we don't have a partnership yet, because we were just exploring that opportunity, we wouldn't know the answer to that until we get more into the weeds.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I think, again, the bottom line is, we talk about career readiness and college readiness, and those concepts drive a lot of the things that state decides to do. And then, you know, they say, oh, you know what, if anybody wants to be career ready, just with the term, not really building the concept fully for the students to understand what that means to them, they say, hey, you as a district are responsible, and you're going to pay for anybody who would like to go somewhere. The challenge is, they know full well on the state side that they are not giving us the same amount that we're going to be spending to send these students, and that's causing the problem. But aside from that, I don't know if things had changed by the time you guys were in high school, but when I was in high school, vocational school approach wasn't the full day necessarily. It was, you were in your school for half a day, then the bus would come and pick everybody up and bring them to the regional vocational school for the rest of the day kind of thing. Now we have, regional schools that are vocational schools that cater to many towns, and as in the case of Pathfinder, and that's all good, but it may or may not be really suitable for all students. So one answer to your question is what Stephen Sullivan has been trying to do, and he started it last year, which is, and I'm going to say this wrong thing again, what is it? I keep on calling it work study, but it's not. It's
Work-based learning.
Work-based
And
learning.
pathways. Mm-hmm.
So what that does, it really allows students who have different interests that may not even exist in some of these vocational schools to say, hey, I'm interested in this. I'm going to take some formative classes here as I'm in my classroom here in the school, and then I'm going to go and practice what I would like to learn and do in the future. I think that's a wonderful example of how we can get creative. One, number two, give an opportunity to our students to experience both high school and then learn the vocation or the career path that they're interested in. Because it's not really an easy decision for many of these students to say, hey, you know what, I don't want to be in this school anymore, I want to go to some other school. But at the end of the day, if it is really, really, truly something that doesn't exist and so extraordinarily attractive to students, and they say, I want to go there, if it's not Pathfinder, then we find ourselves in situations like this. But there are many different things that we can do, and some of them we started looking into already. What was interesting to us, I guess, was to find out that Pathfinder did not have a plumbing program. They did. That's what I thought. So now they are trying to build that program, but they don't know. They're hoping that it's going to be ready for next school year. And they had started already looking into it and rebuilding it. And it happens that one of the students that came to us was interested in a plumbing program. Correct, Cheryl? So that's the one we're talking about.
So criminal justice and plumbing are the two that have caused.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And criminal justice, I don't think Pathfinder is going to
No.
be doing that anytime
No,
soon
I
if they
can
do it
imagine.
all. So, great questions. Thank you for those.
I had a big
Anything else on FY18?
I know you haven't really had, you said you didn't have the opportunity to run the calculation yet, but where do we stand, I guess in comparison to last year or other years with how much we've expended for this point in time?
Let's take a look.
I do know that.
I should write that down, Mike, because you.
Yeah, I asked that a
That
lot.
is your stock question.
Yeah.
I
Well, the
just wanna
run
make
rate
sure-
is important, right?
Yeah.
Just
I get the fact that it's never going to be exactly the same, but it should be within a certain range, I would think.
Let's see, FY17.
If it's a lot higher, then I think that would mean that we probably have to start looking at something.
Let's see, we have it as a 5:31. I mean, at you guys' request, I'm running them just before the meeting, so this one is obviously as of the 17th, so we're off by like 2 weeks, but if I look at this one, hold on, I just have to separate out the local because it's just a spreadsheet. Give me a few minutes. Knew I should have brought my mouse in. Right.
Well, while he's doing that, if you don't mind, it is budget related, but for FY19, I just got word that the Senate, the Massachusetts Senate approved the budget amendment for the proposal that would establish rural school aid in the amount of 1.5 million in funding, which would come to schools that are participating in rural school aid. Now, that's well under what we need, but it's the first step. And so they're encouraging us to keep advocating, which is our role, in addition to policy and hiring the superintendent, that advocacy with our local senators and reps. So now the House needs to approve that in their budget as well. So good work, keep it up, keep the phone calls and the
Yeah.
emails going.
How much
So
does that close the gap?
for us,
Yeah.
oh, I think it's only, at that, I'm not sure it's gonna be more than $37,000, but it's a step in the right direction. The whole, if they were to fund the whole, the money to Granby would have been upwards of 200,000. So it's
They are really starting to do interesting stuff, especially since the Senate also approved the new foundation formula. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they also had conversations about how much extra funding public schools would need, and they were talking about 1.1 billion, which. And I don't think they're going to pass anything like that because they don't have the funding, but I think they are now getting ready for, hopefully, the passage of fair share, because if it's about $2 billion, part of it is going to go to transportation, even though they can't earmark it constitutionally. That gives us an idea that about a little more than half of it, they are thinking about pushing it towards education. So it's not a bad thing. It's they are really testing the waters right now.
So about $66,000 more spent currently than this time last year.
Does that 66,000, does that include the money that was just approved at the last town meeting, or is that?
Right, so
included?
we could subtract out the teacher out of that and the tuition. So yeah, you could,
just about.
you
So
could
that was
probably just about
even.
even.
Okay,
Yeah.
which is
Cool.
good, I think.
That's good.
Yeah,
Did you get your
if you're
answer?
about the
Okay.
same place where you were last
Yep.
year, usually means probably okay, right?
It's good. We're happy that, when numbers are not off one way or the other, we're happy
So
that
am I.
we're on track. Yes. So speaking of numbers, the lunch summary that we have for April. Let's start with the good news. I guess they are telling us that they have close to $7,000 in profit in April, which is great. But if I'm not misreading this, still they are telling us that their year-to-date deficit is 26,600.
That's correct.
So I went back and looked at that. The last time we met, they were at 33,000.
They were.
It does show a difference, but I'm still concerned. I don't think they're gonna make up the full difference between the end of the school year.
No,
This
because
was
I think
as-
last time they said, 17,000 would be where they would expect to land.
Yeah, I
And they
think
still
he
have
said
a ways to
18.
go.
18?
I remember him saying he was committing to thinking they could pull in at the 18. that he
Yeah.
was
So does it look like we may get down another $8,000 or so?
Well, I mean, it depends on whether we have a good June. June's a shorter month. Well, actually, we've got May.
Well,
So
we have May.
basically- So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if we have a month like that, it's entirely possible.
Okay. Let's just keep
Which
our
would be
fingers
nice
crossed
because, I
on
mean, I
this.
have to put that into my calculation for how we're gonna end the year because the school budget's gonna have to absorb the difference.
Yeah.
As you know.
And I don't know if we were receiving this before. The nice thing that I saw is Ken sent a summary of what happened.
Well, I asked him for it because usually I used to try to get it from Andrew and share if there were any highlights, or he'd put notes on the file. But
Okay.
since Ken wasn't going to be here, but he will be here next month, I asked him if he could just put some bullet points.
Alright.
I figured it was just easier to just put the email in your folder.
That's good. I think this is very helpful because then it gives us an idea of what happened the last month. But also, of course, it allows us to question why these things are not consistently happening throughout the year. I mean, one thing that you can't do anything about is how many school days you have in a month. I mean, you know, you have snow days, you have fewer days, more days, whatever, right? So you adjust for seasonality based on calendar, but rest of it is, you know, we may not have much control over it. But some things like if the average cost of meal goes down, up, this and that, those are things that we still don't understand well enough, and it could be a good conversational topic. So it's great that we have this.
So my question here, though, and I probably don't have the answers, is where do we stand for going into next year? Because what happened this year, from what they were telling us, is they got caught flat-footed with a decline in enrollment and didn't respond until halfway through December, maybe early January, to ways to make up for that. I know it's a little bit more complex this year because it's an RFP year, I guess, and so the questions I have are, is there, like, when are we going to see the bid and when are we going to approve the bid versus, like, how do we get word to them what we expect the enrollment to be for next year, and how do we make sure that they're planning for that enrollment? Those are the big questions I have.
And what we're gonna do with the RFP, because we were gonna go in with East Hampton as we did in prior years, but they've decided to not do a joint bid, so we're reworking it, but we're gonna put in our numbers for enrollment so that when the bid goes out, which it will very shortly, they're gonna have enrollment numbers on which to base their bids.
And then would there be, because I know things change fluidly, I mean, this year it happened to be to our benefit, the increase in enrollment, but are we going to have an opportunity to give them another number closer to the beginning of the school year as to what we expect for enrollment that may or may not show them the need to either reduce staff or add staff depending on what happens, right?
I mean, we can certainly share that.
Okay.
Once we know, because usually once June starts rolling around and we see who's,
Right.
who's coming back, who are the new kids coming in, we can certainly share that with them so that we can get, hopefully a more realistic estimate for their renewal year one and their renewal year two, whoever, wins the bid.
I just want to make sure that we give them every opportunity to not have a repeat of what happened last
Right,
year.
nobody likes to be surprised.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm really curious about what this means to us in terms of East Hampton not being part of this anymore. So we'll find out. Any other questions on the lunch program?
Can I just bring up the fact that I've heard from someone who works in the kitchen that those days that you've granted as half-days for exams here at the high school, that there goes the lunch program. Because there won't be lunches served here.
Yeah,
Alright.
that's probably true.
Because those weren't decided until much later.
Right. I mean, that's several days, right?
4.
3 or 4.
Yeah.
4.
Makes a difference.
Yeah.
It's almost like having a vacation week.
But they were swapped out for
Well,
MCAS.
you still have East Meadow and West Street, I mean, that doesn't make up for it. And, they will still on those half days
It was just
do
MCAS
breakfast,
versus.
I'm sure.
I thought they were also talking about doing something, even if it's just, there's something that they can just store in a fridge and people can just
Bag
take.
lunches?
Yeah, something like that, like a salad or.
I don't know.
To-go bags and stuff.
Yeah, I thought we talked about that at the last meeting. On the half days, they were gonna look at doing stuff like that so they don't completely lose the whole
Right.
lunch.
To-go bags for half-days would be awesome.
Right. I think that they are gonna experiment with that. That was my
Yeah,
understanding
that'd
for
be
next
great.
year, that they would offer some sort of grab and go for half days.
Yeah.
'Cause a lot of the older kids go home and their parents are still at work.
Oh, absolutely.
know?
Yeah.
It's peace of mind.
Mm-hmm.
I'll email Ken and ask
Yeah.
about that.
Sorry, I didn't mean
No, that's good. All right. So FY19.
Well, we have no significant changes to the budget since the school committee voted it. That's either good or bad, hasn't changed at least. And beyond that, we have town meeting coming up and we have an $8.8 million budget that hopefully gets approved.
Yeah. do you have anything to
Yes,
share?
so we do have some changes that I would like to talk with school committee about. As Mark referenced, right now, the difference between the town parameter and our budget is about $297,000. And we're very thankful for the collaboration with the town and the finance committee at the first part of the town meeting. So the second part of that is we do have a resignation in one of our departments that we've talked about as the leadership team that we feel that we could absorb as the school department. So in other words, we wouldn't replace that position. So that could be taken out of the operating budget for next year. We have reached out to staff, and thank you to staff who are getting licensure in multiple areas and allows us to do that. It allows us to reach out and say, would you be willing to change the content area that you're teaching in? And so we have had a positive response from staff. So in a nutshell, we can reduce the general operating budget by the resignation salary. And then the second piece is a discussion that we've been having ongoing about the technology and the fact that for 2 years we have had a request, sort of a placeholder, for our E-rate reimbursement. And that request has changed over time because the need has changed over time, but currently the placeholder, I believe, is about $33,000 from David. David's not here right now, but we would like to have a conversation with the town, and I think Emery can lead that, where we could potentially work that through a different avenue and reduce the operating budget by that amount as well. So hopefully the school committee can have a conversation about those two reductions to the budget, which would bring our deficit almost to under 200,000.
Yeah,
Which
we'll
is-
bring it under $200,000. So the reason why those are important, the first one, probably it's worth emphasizing that we had several conversations already. It's really without putting strain on instruction, on delivery of instruction. So it was a conversation that you and the administrative team had. Doesn't mean that position can always remain off the table. This year you all decided that it can be done, but if next year, we're hoping, if we have more students, especially if we have students who will need certain types of instruction or services, we would of course bring it back at that time. This is not really, it's gone forever type of thing, but this year that's an opportunity. The second item is, to his credit, something that Chris Martin brought up during one of the meetings, where he said, hey, I don't really know why you guys don't bring up the IT infrastructure items as part of your capital plan. And we explained to him that, well, the main reason is because whenever we did, which we did, we were told that IT infrastructure cannot be part of our capital plan. It doesn't qualify for it. And for whatever reason, we were not, I guess, able to make the case for it. And we said, okay, we're just going to include it in our operating budget then. He said, well, there are ways for you to really make sure that it's understood. It's truly infrastructure related, and as such, it should qualify to be part of the capital plan. Our challenge right now with this current one is, and that's why we're considering taking that piece out, making the operating budget truly an operating budget without any infrastructure element in it. The challenge is this. We need some of the stuff, in fact, all of the stuff that is included in that $40,000, $41,000 plus. We need those for next school year. And we don't know how the timing is going to work out, even if we can present it as part of our capital improvement plan and then get approval for it, because it has to be approved if it's going to be appropriated through town meeting. Unless there is a different way, which we are looking to find out, to use some other funds and then release those funds out of our operating budget, in which case we are definitely going under $200,000 deficit. And that's our segue to another joint meeting that we'd like to have with the Finance Committee and the Select Board, hopefully next week. And I think I sent some dates to all of you. So I will propose next Wednesday, the 30th, for that joint meeting. And by that time, we will have all the more clarity. We have the clarity over the position, but as far as capital, and with that, we may be able to present to them the reduced gap and see what we can do with that. Because what we talked about at the end of our last joint meeting was what is our opportunity currently to be able to go to the town meeting, all three committees, and say this is our school budget that will be acceptable, agreeable to all three bodies, and then we can stand behind it and then present to the town that way.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Sorry. So I think it's great that we
Mike asked them all last year, so.
Okay, so we
I
approved
still have
the
more.
1.4 through free cash for the roof.
Correct.
Why didn't we try to kind of split the difference and maybe ask to borrow a smaller amount, or say ask for $1 million even for the roof and take a small loan and then use that 400 and overfund the schools because it would never pass, like it wouldn't go through town meeting?
The way it's explained, and there's two schools of thought on this, and it's hard to tell which one is actually more correct, but the cost of trying to take a loan out would have made that even more
Right.
expensive by the end
And
of
I
it.
get that because we were asking, it's like an all or nothing deal, which I don't get, but it seems like, any, because they kept referencing to borrow the 1.4, but if we didn't ask to borrow the full amount, we asked to borrow like 400,000, that wouldn't seem to me to make a huge difference in they kept calling it the debt ratio, which I'm not really sure what that is, but it sounds good. To do that and then use the remaining 400K in free cash and put it to the schools and give us a shot in the arm and kind of carry it through.
I don't know if you know it or not, and if I'm wrong here, please correct me. The school committee did not submit that warrant for the roof. The town administrator did.
Okay.
This group had no control over what was written for the roof or how it was going to be paid.
So if we had that, we would have had to make an amendment at the meeting, or propose an amendment at the meeting, right? Is that how that works?
Plus, Mr. Nally stood up and explained in quite detail about borrowing and what it would cost.
Right,
and,
but that
I
was
mean,
for the full amount when he explained that, so that full 1.4.
They don't wanna hear partial anything.
Yeah,
From joint meetings to the town meeting, nobody. Chris Martin, to the finance committee, to, Mr. Nally was quite explicit. They did not want to hear from anybody about borrowing.
Right.
We actually, it was Deanna who bring up the same exact questions you were with the finance committee and the select board, and it was just shot down each and every time. And I'm trying to do my best to help explain what the reasoning was, but it kind of goes in that school of thought of borrowing versus spending the cash you have on hand.
Right.
I'm not an expert at it.
So I've been an elected official for all of like 2 seconds, and since I put had people sign the papers, to even be here, people are asking me all these questions, and I said I would do my best to ask them. And since this is all so fresh, people everyone's like, well, why didn't we do this? I was like, people, I haven't even really sat on my side of the table yet.
So to be honest, I don't think we ever asked for the full amount to be borrowed. We brought up the borrowing concept a few times, and I don't think we ever had in mind borrowing the entire amount.
Okay.
I thought
We-
Deanna was very explicit in saying,
Yeah.
let's just shoot it down by the $300,000 we're currently
Short.
for this year's budget, and it was not really met very well.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah, so the reason why we did not really do anything on the floor, part of it was because really by that point it was all, it got tense, it got, understood. 2 reasons. One is, and I'll be very honest, one was because if this is how we're gonna pay for it, the town approves it, I mean,
Let's do it,
it has to be done anyway, so we'll go for it. The second one was, we were told that once the warrant for the roof was written in a way that it will use free cash, we could not make a change that would then not cause whatever remaining amount of free cash we're talking about not to go in the coffer for one more year and disappear for 1 year and then come back next year. So it wasn't going to help us anyway, because it was really designated for that project, and it has to be designated for something.
Got it.
And we were explaining that that wasn't going to happen. So we, for those two reasons, we're happy that we're going to have
I
the roof.
love that we're getting a roof. Like, I think that's great,
fixed,
but
so.
it just,
I mean, it's important, and again, just the interesting thing is, for years we talk about this, both ways. We don't, it costs money, but then why are we not maintaining our buildings? And I think this is a good opportunity, because I understand it's been 20 years or so since that roof had. So this is actually an opportunity for us to do something for that roof. And it's going to last a while, because we know that this school building will be here for a little while too. So it's going to be sorely needed, and we're happy that it's going to be done now.
I think the roof was done my senior year. So I graduated class of 92, and that August we had like 15 inches of rain and the roof collapsed.
There you go.
Yeah, and we had a hazmat situation. My senior year was delayed by 2 weeks or something.
Yeah.
But I think when they did it, they ended up doing the whole roof, which is why if it had just been a patch, but it was this end of the building, and the roof, part of the roof ended up here in the library, which is why we have the carpet, we got new lockers.
But I
So
just-
we need
I'm
something
sorry.
like that on a less grand scale so that we can get a whole new school.
Yeah.
I just think that the message that vote sent also, we talk about the public perception, right? The message that vote sent to other people outside of Granby, and even people who live in Granby, another 1.5 million on the roof of the high school is an investment,
That's right.
right?
I
So-
think it's great.
And it wasn't a real nasty fight.
No, it was very cordial.
It
It was
was.
the most cordial meeting I've ever been to.
It was.
Well, and I think part of what the multiple joint meetings has brought up is the idea that we need a short-term discussion of how to move forward in the next couple of years, but then we also need to have a long-term discussion and a long-term solution. And I think agreement on that has led to less tense discussions on town meeting floor, and why I'm hoping for, the town meeting in June to be very similar, and really hoping that the joint meeting can help us understand each other, understand our issues, but come to the table with a solution, as opposed to the finger pointing and, some of the negative. Yes.
And they did last year too.
And they did
Yeah.
last year too.
I'm sure they did, but that just fascinates me that, if they don't get what they want, why don't they ask for it more clearly, right?
And I guess I don't think we see anything wrong in that. We want to be as visible, as transparent as possible. That leads to good conversations. Sometimes we go in, this is true for all of us. Right? Even in our businesses, we go into the weeds and we get into the, how come we have $500 here, and But at the end of the day, I think it helped all of us to understand what we were talking about, what some of these numbers were. Even the fact that we started talking about the retired teacher health insurance concept allowed us to be better educated. That because Granby was not including that amount in its net school spending prior to the education reform in 1993, we could not legally include it in net school spending. In 2015, they opened the window and they said, if you're interested in including it in net school spending, now you can this year. If not, you cannot. And we chose as a town not to do it at that point in time. So I did not know any of that stuff. So suddenly it comes up, it allows us to self-educate and also explain to everybody else what it is. Sometimes it's going to be painful to understand, that there is some extra money spent here or less money spent there. But it is good for us to know where we're spending the money, because again, we're here today, we're not here tomorrow. The more information we can leave for everybody else to benefit from, the better it is for those folks who will, do the same thing in the future. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's just my question when you were talking about the possible reductions for next year is I am concerned about I think it's great. One, it's great to walk in saying we can go in under $200,000 difference, right? But are we really in a spot where that extra teacher is not needed? And I have to kind of defer to you on that, but that's my
And I
biggest
appreciate
concern.
that.
Do we know what it is?
It's a special education position.
Okay.
And given the staffing at Granby Junior Senior High School, we discussed it with staff and with the admin, and feel that we can readjust schedules and teaching load to make that happen. Yep. 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 Yeah, and that's my question. Are you sure?
Yeah.
And they
So
feel
it
that
won't
they
impact
can.
like classroom size
Right.
or anything?
Right.
Cool.
Right. Yep.
So again, there's no guarantee we're going to have that meeting next week.
Right.
We still have one more week after that before the town meeting. Our budget is already voted, officially voted. So we have that amount. We can make amendments on the floor and make changes. But to the extent that we're able to come together and then say this is the amount we're going to put there, whatever we amend, even on the floor, if that is in agreement with all three committees, the better it is for all of us. And we're hoping for that. And your question is basically the key question. I think we made a decision 2 fiscal years ago, even before you were here, that was going to be key for us. That first year we could not stick to it. That we were not going to really vote in favor of reductions, even if it's by, resignations and stuff. If there is any possibility that it's going to impact, the instruction, services, whatever it is. I think last year we pretty much stuck to that. We were able to, but also our gap was much larger. We stuck to it, but our gap was larger. This year, we're in a better position. Even when we started, we were in a better position. But with all the agreements and the additional funds that we're talking about, I think we are. Hopefully, things are looking up. That's what I should say.
Is there a list that I'll be able to see of what the 200K cuts?
With the 297?
Yeah, 297.
Yes.
But we're hoping to be under
Yes.
the 200.
That also, since you just joined us, that also caused a lot of consternation and issues. So here's the way it goes. If we tell the public, especially at our public hearing, as we are getting ready to approve a budget, that where we stand today, here's what we know we're going to be getting, and here's still the gap, we have to explain what the impact is going to be. So what we shared at the public hearing, what Cheryl shared at the public hearing was $297,000 correspond to these services, and in collaboration, in conversations with the administrative team, this is the list that we are looking at as potential, not certain, potential items that may get affected. Maybe we have to find a better way of saying it. I don't know how everybody else says it, but newspapers were on it. The TV stations were on it. Facebook, which, the large Granby Facebook pages were on it. Everybody was talking about those as matter of fact, that we were cutting sports, JV sports, music, arts, some of the services, and we had to go out there and explain that it wasn't. One thing, I'm going to rant on this one, since, we started talking about it.
Sorry.
So,
Sorry.
well, no, it's good. one newspaper, first of all, used the wrong term, said that the proposed budget had these cuts in it, and our proposed budget did not have those cuts. That's why we had the gap in there. And then, I guess the TV channels heard about it. One of them in the morning said, "We hear that you're cutting all these positions. We'd like to come and talk to you." And I said, "No, we're not. Our proposed budget doesn't have those reductions that you're talking about." Later on, she said, "Oh, something came up. We're not going to be able to come because it wasn't the sensational news anymore." But another one showed up. Another TV channel showed up, and the first several sentences of what I told them was that our proposed budget, which we are about to approve right now, and as I pointed in this direction, does not include any of the reductions that folks are talking about or you heard about. That's why we have that gap that everybody knows about, $297,000. But we are not proposing any reductions, no sports cut, no music cut, no arts cut, no anything like that. They took all that part out. And then they started by saying that Granby schools are looking at dramatic cuts if they don't get their $297,000, which semi-factual potentially. But when you start with that, it sends alarms, and we've been negatively affected by those alarming news for so many years that now what do you do?
So that the number is really, we can make it work. Essentially, however, as long as it comes up to that dollar amount. Is that how? I mean, it's probably going to come from those spots because they're the ones that have been deemed as able to be cut, I guess. But it's that. So that's why nothing is definite, because it could,
Right.
when you start to get down to it.
Exactly.
Okay.
There may be school choice revenue that comes in over the summer. There are several things that happen and change over the summer months that can affect the budget greatly. Special education, tuition, transportation. There's a whole bunch of things.
So a lot of people to come to the school, the new school.
Yeah.
So-
Exactly.
So one of the newspapers I read said we got $1 million budget.
Yeah, I saw that.
Which one?
I'm like, wait a minute,
That'd
we're
be
cutting our
nice.
entire budget.
22.
The whole town, yeah.
Was
Channel
on their-
22 said that?
Yeah, it was on their website.
Yep.
I don't watch it, I just read it. It
Yeah.
said we had a $19 million budget.
Yeah.
Wow.
I wish. We wouldn't have the problem.
Yeah, Cheryl is running an expensive
Yeah.
school.
I'm gonna
district.
leave that alone.
$19 million. I mean, think about it.
I know.
The town has a $21 million budget.
Wouldn't that be great?
I don't know if it would be. I mean, what I
You got school committee meetings by the pool at the cabana.
Yeah.
That's what I'm not gonna say that though.
When you don't have the whole picture, I guess,
Yeah.
19 million, it must be, must be close
We're
to
small
it.
town people.
It was like almost double the actual amount.
Yeah, pretty much. So anyway, that was a good conversation, and please don't stop asking those questions because
I have a lot of them,
Yeah.
so I'm sort of, I feel like I need to apologize in advance.
so you will ask some of the questions that I guarantee you a lot of folks who watch will benefit from. A lot of folks who will come to these meetings will benefit from, because when you sit here for so long, you start assuming that, hey, we talked about it for so long that it's no longer one of those missing links. Let's just skip to the next item. So as Cheryl said, Mike was asking all the good questions last year. Jen did that before that. So you will also hear when, one thing that I forgot to do early on during your organization, I have to bring it back. Deanne and I are getting into some probably more political and deeper things at times. It's because we now, hey, we know everything else that everybody else is asking, so can we just ask something different? So that was the nice thing about this committee. We were really asking all levels and layers of questions to benefit even ourselves, because the questions that you're asking, even if we asked the same questions before, are helping us to think and rethink about some of those stuff, and it's never a bad thing. Since I mentioned it, I made a small error in not just bringing this as part of our reorganization, because we have to go to the select board to fill our missing seat, and that's part of our reorganization as well. I know that Deanne is interested in continuing for one more year, and the way it works, when there are vacant seats, they can only be filled for 1 year, but we recommend and the select board appoints. That's their purview. So for the coming year, is there a motion to recommend Deanne Payne Rakowski, as our 5th member to be appointed by the select board?
Okay, I guess I can make a motion.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay. Any discussion, or do you have any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
If we vote yes, is that gonna get us in trouble?
We
With
can't
Deanne,
vote her in.
No, but is she really interested?
Oh yeah, she's yeah.
I was in trouble with Deanne.
No,
Does she know?
she even said last meeting.
Yeah.
She
Yes.
has 1 more year
Yeah.
to give.
So it was purposeful. You have Deanne's the position that is vacated by Deanne, the 3-year term, because she did not want to do it for 3 years. She had one more year left in her, and then she would like to do it. So okay, so all in favor to approve, please say aye. Aye. I will send a message to the select board to consider her appointment at their next meeting, and then I don't know when they are meeting. Maybe next Tuesday. I don't know, because they met yesterday too. All right. So our next item. Was there anything else on FY19 that we had to? Okay. So my takeaways. This is something else Deanne likes. Takeaways from this one. I will reach out to the Finance Committee and the Select Board for a meeting on the 30th if they can. If they can't, I will let everybody know and see if we can find a good date for all of us. Also, we will continue to look into that infrastructure amount and see what that is. Otherwise, the vacated position is going to be taken out of that gap without any impact to instruction. And that's going to be part of our conversation with them. So the next 2 items actually are related to the same topic, different perspectives. What we, as a school committee, decided to do this year was to go out for bids on two different at 2 different levels. One is contracted services. The other one, look for a full-time business manager and have basically it's not a bid anymore. It's putting an ad out there and looking for candidates. So what we are doing here, we have to consider both of those, because for the bid we had one, right, and it was TMS. And then for the appointment of new director, we had several applications, and then we had a series of interviews and finalists, and then and we had interviews with those as well. So, did you want to explain the rest of it, or do we have to, I think, vote on both of them?
Right.
So the one that we decline, we just push it to the side, and then we discuss the other one.
Correct.
That's okay. I just don't want to do the wrong thing. So the vote on the business management bid, I'm assuming that is our contracted services.
Correct.
Okay. The second one, and I will include it in here. As a result of those interviews, we have a candidate. So for both of those, we have candidates. We have TMS on one side, and we have a candidate who would be a full-time business manager for the school district for the other one. To go in one of those 2 directions, we have to vote, and the one that the school committee does not want to pursue, we have to decline that one, correct? Did I explain it correctly? Okay. So we'll go in the order that we have here, and we'll start with the vote on the business management contracted services. That bid, I don't know the details, so you have to help me on that one. That bid came from TMS. It was for 1 year,
1 year with a 1 year extension, I believe, which was the previous.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what it was. Do we have any other information that we need to share on that one?
No.
Okay.
No.
So we vote whether to accept that
To
bid?
reject.
Accept
To
or
reject all
reject.
bids.
Okay. So is there a motion to? So we have to vote to approve, and then if the committee rejects or declines, then we decline, correct?
So we had a bid opening.
Yeah.
And then I informed TMS that we were not going to make a bid award within the timeline of the expectation, because the school committee had determined that they wanted to see if they were could have a candidate for business manager. So right now what we've done is gone back and said we've opened the bids, but we do have a candidate. So we are going to reject all of the bids for business management services. So we are basically saying, yes, we've opened the bids, but we're rejecting all the bids. And then the second piece would be then to have the discussion about hiring a business manager full-time.
Okay. So I guess the motion is, having opened all the bids for for business management contracted services, is there a motion to reject
All bids.
all bids?
Okay, I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
A second.
Okay. Any discussion, any questions, since I probably made it as clear as it could be? No? Okay, so all in favor to reject all the bids for business management contracted services, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So now we are gonna vote to determine whether or not we're approving the candidate who would be a full-time business manager for the school district, correct? Will you be able to share any more information before we do
Yes.
that? Okay.
So, first of all, I want to say thank you to TMS. They have been a long-standing partner with the Granby Public Schools and in Western Mass. And, you know, I certainly have appreciated their time. I also appreciate their patience as we've worked through this. We've had several discussions about this over my tenure, and certainly going back to Dr. Houle about the best direction moving forward. So thank you to TMS.
Do you mind if I add a quick thing on that one?
Yes.
Thank you to TMS, but I also want to thank you, Mark, personally. It was actually nice working with you, because you know we got some of the answers, I guess, or some of the questions answered that we were not able to get answers to or clearly understand for a while. You were very helpful in doing some of that, and we appreciate it.
Very welcome.
Yeah, and there was a reason why we went both of these ways. You know, as much as it is probably uncomfortable to explain all this, we really, and you know these conversations, we were really in between those two decisions as to whether, in light of all these financial changes, budget constraints and everything, we were at a point to decide whether or not we needed a full-time individual here who would just continuously be in touch with the town. And we went into that with the understanding that that wasn't the contracted services model if we decided to go that way, but we did not know whether we were going to end up going that way. So it wasn't really putting anybody on the spot. We could have gone either way if the parameters that we had set out didn't play the way we expected. So we could have had the other side of the conversation. So I want to make sure that this is not a reflection of whatever we've been doing together the last so many years with TMS, and especially with you the last couple of years. So it is much appreciated.
Yeah, you're very welcome. It's been a pleasure to work with you guys.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, with me anyway.
Well,
So with that being said, the process for interviewing and finding a director of business, we did use Talent Ed, and we had several applicants for the position. We interviewed 5 originally. And let me back up. We had a committee that was made up of the admin team, the school committee chair, Emery was on, and we also had office staff participating. So it was a real, I think it must have been a real experience for the candidates moving through the process. We had 5 interviews, and from those 5 interviews, we actually had 3 finalists come back and do a performance task for us, actually 3 performance tasks, where they presented their thoughts on where we saw the potential for growth and where some of our struggles are, and especially through financing. And so from the 3 finalists, there was a unanimous decision to move Adam Tarquini forward as the candidate for Director of Business. His resume is in your folder, your shared folder. He comes with experience in managing grants in Springfield Public Schools. He actually managed more grant funding than our entire budget, and he is currently working in Hampden Wilbraham Regional in the finance office as an assistant to the finance director there. So, with the committee's approval, we would like to, as our interview committee, we would like to move forward Adam as our finalist for consideration.
Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Take a second.
Any questions, discussions, comments?
Would he be starting previous to the fall over the summer?
Yes, TMS, the contract wraps on June 30th, and so the candidate, we'd like to start July 1. And I had some conversation when we were discussing this with TMS about overlap, if it went in a direction where we were able to hire, and they're certainly willing to help that transition happen.
That's awesome.
Thank you, appreciate that.
what do you mean? You need it when you come in cold or something. It's always nice to have somebody to show point out where things are.
Duck here.
Yeah.
So is this person gonna be around for the June 11th town meeting to get a sense of
Potentially,
that?
yes. Certainly as I was in May, to sit in the little box in the white chairs. Yes.
So if you don't mind, just one quick interesting note. We did not know this, but the joint meetings that we had, especially the first one, candidates wanted to understand what was going on in Granby because they were interested. So obviously we thought they were members of the community, that we hadn't seen before. They were there sitting at our meetings apparently and just listening to what kind of conversation was happening. So one of them was at the first joint meeting. Another one was at the second one of those joint meetings. So they were trying to closely understand what was going on.
As long as they weren't near me, because I haven't seen them.
Yeah, that was the only comment they had, but that's okay, Rob.
And they're still interested?
After seeing Robin?
No, after.
Yes, I guess they were. Okay, so with that, all in favor to approve the finalists for business manager for the Granby School District, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. I don't think we have executive session. Is there anything, since this is our very first meeting of the new term, is there anything that we should be including in our next meeting?
I have a very busy next meeting.
You do?
I do.
Okay, all right.
There's a lot of, we were the recipient of some grants. There are some policy changes. So it's a little bit busy. So if anybody has anything to add, let me know.
Yeah.
There's a lot to go over. Short, but a lot of information.
By the way, what portion of our budget, roughly, is grants and revolving funds and all that?
That pie chart was.
Yeah, well, let's just do a quick calc.
And while he's doing that, I wanted to reach out to the committee and say if anybody has individual questions, please don't be afraid to ask. Set up an appointment. I'm available. I'm happy to meet with people. I often get, I really don't want to take up too much of your time, but if you're unsure about anything, please just call. That's the best way. And if you're hearing something and you're not sure about the information, especially because you're a liaison with the community, it's great for you to just give me a call and we can chat about it. And if it's bigger than both of us, then it comes to the committee. So.
I thought that was your way of saying by appointment only, but so that's
well, if you did the Malachi training, that's right. You'd have to have an appointment.
All right,
And Kathy would have
that's
to
good.
set it
We
up.
got the
and all
message,
that,
Cheryl,
but
thank you.
It's okay.
Do you get a new photo on the webpage? Because I want that other one down.
Which one? Oh.
Skinny over here.
Yeah, that's right. Okay,
yeah.
new
The other
photo.
the other one now will have two of those individuals gone,
Yeah.
and we have
Yeah.
Jen. So should we wait for Deanne to return and then
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna wait a little bit.
we'll have a picture?
Yeah.
Here's what it is. I wanted to put that. You were there. Yes, art night. The
Yes.
Granby 250th.
Yes.
I wanted to make that our profile picture. It wouldn't fit, and I can figure it out. So if there is someone who can figure it out, I change the dimensions and everything. It just pops and it just shrinks it. Oh yeah, it cuts it, truncates it. So if anybody wants to take a shot at it, we can do that.
11%. 11% grants.
11%. So that is over $1 million, right?
Mhm.
Okay. And I wanted to thank you for that. I wanted to bring that up, especially because we may or may not have a regular meeting before June 11th. Because it's as if everyone is interested in grants. And I'm glad that you brought that topic of grants. And we have a couple of good grants that we're going to talk about. And we may have some more conversations about grants in the coming days, weeks, months. But 11% of our budget is grants, even currently at this time. It's a matter of really improving it, finding more of that type of grant, but doesn't mean that we don't have any grants.
Right.
We still are running parts of our programs based on grants, and a lot of work goes into making sure that those grant requests or applications are renewed every year. So that is good to know. The other thing that we did not talk about, and our student representative neglected to mention, 2 weekends from now is graduation. Everyone is invited, if you're available. If you, it's late for gowns now.
Yes. Yeah.
If you're interested, I know that it was.
One was ordered for me, and I won't be able to make it. So if you want, there's a gown ordered.
Okay. So it's June 2nd, starting at 10 o'clock at the high school gym, the 2018 graduation.
So what time does that mean we get here for around 9:15, 9:30? So we get.
We get here around 9:30, and then you put your gown on.
And I
all
iron
that.
your gowns for you.
Yeah.
That's all
There you go.
good.
Yes, that's what we did
And
last
my
year.
ironing board.
Yeah. Is there anything else in the meantime?
I don't think so, but I do think
Okay.
we have a June 7th meeting. I think. The 4th?
June 4th. Okay. All right. So. Good. So we're gonna have more time to discuss, hopefully.
Should probably do next year's.
So with that, welcome aboard again, Jen.
Thank you.
Hopefully you stay after this meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Well done.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye.